Let's see if everything works. Hey, it looks like it works. What do you know? I think we're good. Let's see here. I'm going to do a volume check. This should start in a second. Let's see if everything works. Hey, it looks like it. That was me. So it must be working. All right. Good morning, everybody. It is Monday, and I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. I'm just setting up the computer here. I think I'm in good shape. I've got cameras turned on. I've got audio. I've got everything here. So it looks like we're in good shape to get things kick-started here for this Monday. And let me just move some things around because I really don't need this at the moment. I'm going to set it over here. And I've got a lot of stuff kind of on the workbench that doesn't allow me to put my computer up here at the moment. So we're going to work around that and see what we can come up with here. Let me throw this. Oh, score. Nice. There we go. We'll put that over there in case I need to change scenes. And I've got my bench that I'm sitting on in clamps because really not great construction. My wife bought these for something else, but anyway, we had a couple of extras and I put one in the shop here. It's just like a bar stool, but it's just made with really simple dowel construction on the little stretchers between the legs, and they used what had to be the cheapest, like most minimal amount of epoxy ever. Not really well clamped or glued up or anything. They look fine, but structurally they are not fine. So I've had to re-glue a couple of the legs. And so I'm sitting gingerly on it right now because I just discovered a couple more that needed gluing. And I glued those up and we should be okay. But anyway, getting on to the meat and potatoes of things. Well, first of all, hi, my name's Jeff. If you are new to the channel, this is my workshop, or JR's wood shop, and this is where I make things. Mostly things like this, which is a sewing machine base. I make a lot of these because that's what most of my customers want. And yeah, so that's what I do most of the time. I do some other projects, which we're going to actually do a different project today. So that's kind of fun for me. I just needed a little break from what I've been doing. This weekend was spent with a sander in hand. I was doing all of the finish. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bases here. So you can see I have a lot of bases just laying around that I've been working on. And I had to go through, and really the thing that is so time consuming on these is the sanding process because, well, you don't want to skimp on sanding. I mean, that's just the bottom line. So even though it's my least favorite part of any project, it is undoubtedly one of the most important parts of any project. And that is to make sure that you've got your sanding to a level that will be reflected when you put whatever finish you put on these. You know, the more time you spend with a sander and sandpaper in hand, the more beautiful your project will turn out when you finally, in fact, actually, you know what, I see a little scratch right here. I'm gonna have to come back and hit this one because I just saw a scratch. But anyway, the more time you spend sanding, the bigger the payoff in your final project. And I'm gonna circle this because, doggone it, I just saw that. I touched on this the other day when I was doing some sanding, which is if you have like a different kind of light other than your overheads are great and they give you illumination, but they don't necessarily give you the light angle that you need to check for scratches and such. So I've got just a little light like here that you can, very bright, but if I shine this across the surface at a low angle, I'm more apt to see scratches and such that I didn't catch from the overheads, because the overheads kind of fill all of the the scratches with light, and they're hard to see, but when you shine a light from the side, what happens is it casts little shadows in all the little scratches. They get little shadows and they pop out much better. So usually hitting it low like this, yeah, and there's one little scratch there on the side. And I say that because I've got a light right here in front that you can't see, but it's right here. And so it was shining across and I just caught that little bit. But if I go across the rest of this, hopefully it looks pretty good. The other thing is that you really need to wipe your projects down after sanding with a tack cloth or something, because dust will fill your scratches as well. And if dust is filling your scratches, you don't really get to see them. And this though, looks like I'm pretty good. I think I just had that one area that, the other problem I have sometimes is, you know, I will go through and do all these things, but then if you don't handle your materials gently after you've done the sanding, you know, and you bang them against things or whatever, you're more apt to get scratches. Anyway, I spend all weekend sanding these things. I start at 120 because coming off my tools, they're pretty good already. So I start at 120. Some of them I hit at 80 just because they needed a little bit extra. So some of them at 80, but most of them I start at 120. Then I go to 150, and then I go to 220 because that's what I have. Some people go 150, 180, 220. I actually I think it might be 240. I'm trying to think of the sandpaper. I've got new sandpaper, so. But anyway, usually 120, 150, 220, 240 slash whatever. And then I finish sand with 320. And I was doing that with my little hand sanding Ryobi right here, just hand sanding these things and getting them super smooth. Do all the roundovers, break all the edges on the handles here. And yeah, so I spent hours and hours this weekend just sanding the remaining projects here. And then what will happen at that little area, right? Drew that on there? Yeah, I'm gonna have to hit that with the sandpaper one more time, but that's okay. So once they're at this point, they're really ready for me to clean up and put finish on. So I'm sparing you the finishing portion of it, just because it's basically me with a brush and stain, and you brush it on and you wipe it off, depending on the finish. Now, this is walnut, so for walnut, I will not be staining walnut because that's kind of a waste, right? Walnut's already just this beautiful wood. But what I will be doing is hitting this with some oil, some Danish oil. I use a dark walnut Danish oil. It has a little bit of pigment in there, makes the wood a little bit darker, but really makes any figure and grain just pop on walnut, and it looks awesome. So that being said, I did do something to this base that I don't do to the others. Let me switch here and see if that looks okay. So let me bring this one back over and I'll show you. So if you look at this one, I do carving in some of them. So this has, try to get that so you can see that logo in there. There you go. Yeah, about that. There you go. So you can see that I carve a logo into these things. That's a good spot right there. So I carve a logo in and do some flourishes and stuff. It looks fancy, right? Typically when I do this, when I stain these, the stain gets in there, and because that is cut fibers in there from the carving process, they soak in more stain and they become darker. So it stands out more than the wood surrounding the carving, which is great. The problem is when I'm doing something dark like this, which then gets a dark oil on there, it doesn't necessarily make the carving stand out as much. So a lot of times on walnut, what I will do is I will mask this off with some tape, which is what I did. I just used painter's tape, masked off the area that had the carving on there. Then I will spray that area with shellac, and I give it a good coating of shellac. And the reason I do that is that I come back after the shellac and I hit this with black paint. So the shellac basically creates a barrier on all the flat wood that's already been sanded. and that barrier then gets sanded off. Once the black paint has dried, I come back and sand off any paint that was, you know, obviously on the flat portions here, because I only want that paint in the carving. So you can see I've got the nice black inside there, and when this gets stained darker, that will make this pop, and you'll really be able to see that. So I don't always do that, but sometimes with the walnut I will do that, and I'll paint black inside there. But like I said, I always hit this with, I sand it down flat, get it nice and smooth, then I hit it with some shellac. You know, I tape it off too, because I don't need to paint the entire thing. I just need to paint this little teeny area, and hit that with paint, because I just want paint inside the lettering in the carving area. I just use a regular, what do I use? Like this stuff right here. It's just regular black paint, spray paint. So there's nothing special about it. Typically, I like to have some flat black, but I only had some glossy, but it's okay. It's not the end of the world if it's glossy. But honestly, just want that paint inside. So that's why if you cover most of the areas that you can with some tape and then mask everything off, and then hit it with shellac and do a good job with your shellac coat, it seals the wood and does not let that black paint soak into the wood, right? So that's kind of the way that you keep it only going into. Now, there's shellac inside too, but that's okay, because when I sand, I'm only sanding off the surface area. The black paint stays inside, and we get this really nice looking, you know, standout logo. So that's, like I said, that's very different from what I normally do, but with all the other, I've got different ones here that about half of them have logos on them, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so I try to mix it up, because not everybody wants a logo on their base. Some people do, some people don't. So I try to mix it up. Some get logos, some don't. This one's for a friend, and so this one is different than the ones I normally do. Normally, I would not put a name on here, and I don't. Please don't contact me with special orders to put your name on here. This is for like one of my best friends, and it was his mother's sewing machine, and she passed on a few years ago. But anyway, very special thing. Normally, I will not put a name on here for anybody. If you want a name on there, it's going to cost you a lot more. But I don't, because I don't do special orders. And I'll talk about that for a minute, because so here's the thing with special orders. If this was my business, right, and I was making things and selling them all the time, then yeah, I would do special orders, because, you know, having clients that you're making things for is kind of like guaranteed money. My problem is that, it's not a problem, but my concern is that by taking on a special order, I now have an obligation that I have to meet. And I don't know that I'm always in a position to meet that obligation. I'm retired, I do this part-time, and you know, one of the nice things about being retired is it gives me flexibility to do things with my schedule that I couldn't do when I was working all the time. So I don't like obligating myself. I have plenty of people who buy my bases, that my bases don't sit around and get dusty. When they're done and completed and listed in my shop, they sell. So I'm not worried about not being able to sell my stuff. And I appreciate the fact that people want things that are custom made and everything. But the problem is that I can't guarantee when it'll get done, because I've always got something going on. Like these bases right here, I don't know how many weeks it took to make these. Probably 3, maybe 4 weeks. And I actually started these prior to my bike packing trip. So they sat around for another couple of weeks or whatever. So that's kind of the thing, is that if I do special orders, I'm now obligated, and it cuts any spontaneity and any diversity out of my schedule. Because if I don't feel like making something, if I feel like today I'm not going to work on bases, I'm going to make something else, Well, I can't do that if I have special orders, because now people are expecting their stuff and they want it, and they want to know how long it's going to take and everything else. So for me, I just basically say no special orders. And in doing so, some people don't like that and they get a little upset about it, but honestly, I don't do this for other people. I just do this for me. I enjoy doing it, and I love the fact that people get my stuff and they are happy with it, but I'm not doing this as an obligation to someone else. So when I make my stuff, if people like it, they can buy it. If they don't, well, that's okay too. But when you do a special order, now you've got client expectations, time constraints, just added pressures that honestly, I just don't want the added pressure. I have done some commission pieces and some other things, and I have a few friends that I do things for, that like sewing machine bases and such, that I do things for because they are family friends, not because they're clients. And there's a big difference. And because a family friend, I can say, hey, I'm not going to get to that for like, I have no idea when. And if they're cool with that, they're like, okay, that's fine. You can say that to a client, but they still have expectations. So for me to get rid of those client expectations, I just basically tell people now I don't do special orders. And that's made my life a lot easier, because I just put my stuff up when it's ready, I put it up. If they sit around and don't get, lacquer sprayed for, 3 or 4 weeks, that's okay. I don't care, because things come up in my shop when they're ready to go in the shop and not on somebody else's schedule. I have people all the time who ask me about stuff and want things, and they'll say, hey, I need a base for my Model 66 Red Eye. That's a sewing machine. And I'd be like, okay, great. I'm working on, 6 of them right now. And I say, follow my shop so that you know when I add things to there, and then you can check it out and buy them. And they're like, oh, can you let me know? I'm like, no, I honestly can't, because here's the thing. I'll forget, and then you'll get mad. So I can't let you know. Basically, keep an eye on my shop. When they show up, you can buy it. And that's kind of how I do things. It's kind of sounds like a crappy way of doing things, but like I said, it takes all the pressure off of me. And so, like, if you go to a store and you walk in, it's like if stuff's in the store, you'll buy it. If it's not in the store, you're like, okay, well, they don't have it. I guess I won't buy it, right? It's the same thing. When I load things into my shop, it's available to buy. If you're the first one to get it and there's only one, well, good for you. You bought it. If somebody else buys it first, I'm sorry. You'll have to wait till the next time I load some in. So anyway, that's kind of how I run my operations these days. Is I take all of the pressure off myself, and basically just try to provide products. And that's why I always have things in the process, so that I can keep feeding my store, but I don't sweat the details. I don't put myself under time constraints. When things are ready to go in the shop, they go in the shop. And until that time, people just have to kind of sit around and wait. And I've had people say, oh, I couldn't wait and I found a base somewhere else. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm glad you were able to find something. And it doesn't offend me and it doesn't bother me. There's not a lot of people making these, but there are some people out there making bases and such. And so if you're able to find one somewhere else that suits your needs, that's awesome. If you really just want to hold out and wait for one of mine, well, you got to sit around and wait. That's the way it works. Let me dump a couple of these tools off camera here just to get them out of the way. One of them is an X-Acto knife, and I don't want to cut myself on it. Let's see what else we got going on here. All right, so kind of a roundabout way of what I did this weekend. But anyway, all of these bases now are ready for, can you see them? They're all stacked up over here, and this one right here. These are all ready for some semblance of stain. So typically what I will do with these is I will clean them because they've been finish sanded. I will clean them with naphtha. And then depending on what the process is, some of them will get stained, some of them get oiled, some of them get a gel stain, some of them get an oil stain, some of them get, like I said, like this will get a Danish oil. And so I break that up over different periods of time. I don't necessarily need to do it all at once. And I'm gonna have to move these at some point in time because I'm gonna need my router table. But anyway, I will do all those things off camera because really, you don't need to watch that. So what are we doing today? Well, as I stated, sometimes I just need a break from what I'm doing and I want to do something else. And not always a big project. Sometimes I just need some little projects. At one point, I think I made a scrap wood cutting board, which actually turned out really cool. It's still in my house. I'm probably going to give that to somebody for Christmas. But sometimes I'm just looking for little projects to have fun with and keep me engaged and stuff. And I saw this weekend, I was watching some videos because, you know, I don't have a life. And when I was watching the videos, I was watching somebody make a mallet. Some people call it a hammer. It's not really a hammer, it's a mallet. So this is my only mallet right now that I have. It's round. I did this on my lathe. It's walnut. It's a nice, tough, hard mallet, but what I don't have is a square face mallet. I don't have one that is flat on the edges. And sometimes you want a flat, square face mallet, not a round one. So this is more like a wood carver's mallet right here. And it's really well balanced and I love the way it feels. I think I got this piece of wood from a friend of mine. But anyway, this is my only mallet and I saw somebody making a wooden mallet. There are people who, I make bases, there's people who all they do is just make wooden mallets. But anyway, I saw one that looked really cool and I was like, well, I do have some wood laying around. I think it would be kind of fun to make myself a mallet, like a square face mallet, because I don't have one of those. So I went ahead and milled up some wood because we're gonna need some wood here, right? And I kind of have a general design in my head. I also made a template. So this is basically the handle that I will be using. Well, not this, but the general shape of the handle. And it goes like this, kind of sticks up through there. It's rough. It doesn't have to be this way, but it's kind of the shape that I want. So for the head of the mallet, what I've decided to do is use walnut. And for the, let me get these out of the way. For the handle, I have some beautiful figured maple that I want to use. And I went ahead and milled up these boards yesterday. Now they're clamped to my work table because, let me loosen this clamp here. A lot of times when you're milling wood, you're removing the top layer, which relieves stress in the wood, and the wood can have a tendency to, when you flattened it, you come back the next day and you'll notice that it's actually warped and such, because that wood will move because you've removed the wood and moisture takes over and it will twist and do things. So generally, if I've milled wood, what I'll do is I'll come back the next day, I'll clamp it to my workbench just to keep it flat. And then when I come back to actually work with it, it still is in its flattened state instead of kind of twisted. So hopefully this is still flat. It looks flat. So I'll show you what I've got here is this piece of walnut. Now this came from a what they call rustic walnut. And I thought it was interesting. Look at so if you look at the color difference between these two boards, this came out of this. So this kind of more of a brownish color here, and then this has more of a gray tint to it. This is what happens when you actually just, trying to show you the color here. But when you actually mill these things and you remove this exterior, you get this kind of color change. And this is what the air does to the wood. So anyway, this is, actually needs to go back on my wood pile over here because it is not going to be used. I got the piece that I need. So this will be the head of the mallet. Excuse me, this is going to be the head of the mallet. And I will make this out of, like I said, out of this walnut. Walnut is pretty hard and takes some abuse. This is going to be the handle. And this stuff is just, let me show you this stuff. This stuff is gorgeous. Look at the figure in this thing. Is that beautiful or what? So this is all figured maple right here, which, by the way, you get this much figure, it is really hard to work with because figure is just basically the wood fibers doing this. They're bending up and down, which means you get straight grain, you get end grain, straight grain, end grain, and it is very prone to chipping and splitting and popping out. So it's really hard to get a smooth surface here. I was lucky enough to send this through my planer, which has brand new blades in it because it's a brand new planer. And so it did and I took really, really shallow cuts and got a really nice finish on here without chipping anything out. And it will obviously get done more, but this is going to be my handle. This is going to be my head right here. So I will cut a piece out of here, use this really pretty figured wood. I'm gonna try to keep it down as low as I can. And then I'll probably use some offcuts from this to create some wedges to go down inside the handle. Well, actually, do I want that? No, actually I don't. I'm gonna use, actually, I've got another piece. Do I have another piece over here? I've got some walnut laying around somewhere, some scraps, and I will cut some wedges out of the scrap walnut to use, because you want something contrasting. I was like, oh, I could use the offcuts, but that doesn't make sense. So anyway, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut out a handle. I'm gonna use this as a template so that when I rough cut around the handle, I can stick this onto there and then use a flush trim bit in my router table and get this trimmed down to the right size. We're gonna have to do some glue ups on here. So it's not gonna all happen at once, but I did want to get it started because kind of fun, right? So where should we start? I think we should start with the head. And what we're looking at is I'm gonna make this in a basic, like a 3x5 type size here. So I've got a piece here that is, how long is this? 21 inches long. So if I'm going to do 5-inch sections, which a 5-inch section is not very big. It doesn't need to be big. It's not a huge mallet. I mean, I guess I could go 6 inches. We'll go 6 inches. How about that? So if I go 6 inches on this thing, and there's 6, and then we'll move it over here, and there's 12. Get my mark here, and then from 12 we've got 18. So we've got about this much wood. Well, there's my wedges, right? I can use this as wedges. So we've got our wood that will cut into 3 pieces. 2 of those pieces will be the outside, so they will fit like this. The inside piece will be split in 2 with a section missing out of the middle, which is where the handle right here will fit between those 2 pieces of wood like this. We're going to cut bevels on there so that we can drive some wedges in. Those bevels will, the handle will split out to those bevels and then hold it super tight into the handle, and all will be well. All right, so let's go ahead and work on this, because otherwise I'll just sit here and yak and be stupid. So we don't need that. I'm going to go ahead and trim this edge off and get it nice and flush trim. I say flush trim. Square it up 90 degrees, make it look really nice and square to the edge. And let me get this set up. This is some more of that walnut. It was actually a large knot in this piece. And you can see it. There's a knot in there, right? Go here. So if you see this knot, so what that knot was doing was it was making the board came out and then had a bend to it like this. And so by cutting it at that knot, it kind of released it, so I had 2 flatter pieces to work with. So that was kind of where, ow, doggone, I just knocked my clamp off of there. I knew that was going to happen. But anyway, so that kind of allowed me to get some flatter boards on there. Let me put it on this way. That way, maybe I won't knock it off. There we go. All right. So let me get my power here. I got the dust collection hooked up. We'll put some power on the saw, and then we're going to clean off one edge, and we will make that edge nice and square. And then I actually have my flat face and my flat side marked here. So this is 90 degrees right here. So I will cut off, put this against the fence, and I'll cut off right here. Give me a nice square end cut. Because this is definitely not square. And then what we'll do is we'll cut these pieces down to size. So let me get my ears, and I need my remote for my thing here. All right. And I'm just going to quickly, I'm not going to move a camera around because it doesn't take that long to do this. Okay. That being said, put this over here. I don't know. Now I have a very square end to my board here, and I can start measuring my cuts. And I'm gonna just mark off my 6 inches here. Now this doesn't have to be exact. I'm not making this to any specific template or anything. But, you know, accuracy is never a bad thing. Let me get 6 inches cut down here. Okay. And I'm going to cut this off. And then I'm going to just basically cut 3 of these. So once I get the first one cut, I'll use that to measure the second one. I'll cut the third one, and that will be the process. So I'm just going to pop over here and do that real quick. Okay, so we have our 3 faces. Right here. So this will basically be the thickness of the mallet right here. All right, which is pretty good. I mean, that's a pretty sizable mallet head. You can see, looking at it this way. So that's pretty good. So now what we need to do is we're going to have to cut a section out of the middle part because we're going to need to glue this up. And we need to cut a section out of the middle. So let me figure out how I want, first of all, how I want these things lined up, because if there's any particular grain orientation or anything that I'm worried about. See what they look like. Kind of like them all oriented the same direction. It's not really going to hurt anything. This is not a panel glue up by any stretch of the imagination. And these are going to get trimmed down at some point too. All right, so that looks pretty good. So what I need to do now is I need to chop out my middle pieces here and get them wedged to fit this piece right here, this long tongue that's going to come through there from the handle, needs to be able to fit inside here and have room to spread apart. It doesn't need to be a lot, but it needs to be enough. I think a 2 degree angle, 2 or 3 degree angle is what I'm going to need. And let me find, I've got a tool for that. So hang on just a second. Let me look and see if I can find that. There we go. And I need a, let's see here. Trying to find, I used to have a, like a compass around here, so I could figure out, you know, like angles and such. It was just a simple, like, plastic kids' school compass. And I don't think I have one of those anymore. But anyway, I do have this, and I can draw myself a line on here that is, and then I'm just going to measure it. So from 90 degrees, so about like that. And then this line comes like this. Okay, that's not having to do anything with what I'm doing here. I'm just using that so that I can now take my bevel here and get that angle and then transfer that angle over to my saw. So there you go. So that's the angle that we're looking at. It's not really, it's only like 3 degrees off of 90. So what I need to do is get this middle piece here. Get these set aside. I'm going to get this middle piece. Let's set this aside too. And we're going to first find the middle of this. So this being 6 inches should not be difficult to do. I think it should be 6 inches. It is. So obviously 3 inches, right? So 3 inches, because we're going to find the middle point, and then we'll work off of that middle. We'll work out to get the amount that we're going to cut off of these things. So I'm just going to draw a line down here. Doop. And that's my middle line, so you can see that I've drawn a line. Just goes down the middle. Now I need to figure out how big this section is going to be. So this is 1.25 inches, which means, what, 75? So at the bottom here, it needs to fit exactly at the bottom. So that 1.25 inches is going to be 3/4 of an inch on either side. So let's see if we can find 3/4 of an inch on either side here. 3/4 of an inch. Three-quarters of an inch. Okay, so I've got my little 3/4 of an inch mark. I'm going to draw a line straight up from there. And that's the bottom of my cut. And that's where the handle is going to come in and meet the mallet head. But at the top, the tongue that's going to stick out the top is actually going to be wider than that. So we will take this and we will draw a line from that point to here. And we will do the same thing on this side. Now you can take these at different angles. The big thing is, you know, it depends on how much of an angle you really want. So I've got, just kind of erase that inner line there. And that way it kind of helps me keep straight. And so my cuts will look something like this. Now, I might go a little bit more extreme than that. Here's the thing, when you do these cuts, what you have to do is you have to take this and split it right down to the bottom. And you do that on the bandsaw usually. So this whole section will actually get cut while the wood is square because it helps you to get nice straight flat cuts on everything. You don't want to have this screwed up in a way that will give you odd cuts on here. So you want this all straight. But if you want this to not split out and crack, what you can do is drill a hole at the bottom, a larger hole. And in essence, what you're doing is, let me show you here real quick. So what you're really doing is you're drilling, or you're cutting a hole, or cutting this line, and then you make a hole at the bottom like this. Okay, and that hole at the bottom, what it does is it removes stress so that when you drive the wedge in, it doesn't crack as easily as if there was no hole there, because it gives a place for that board to spread out because there's a hole. If that was just wood fibers, those wood fibers might split all the way down in the handle, but because there's a hole at the bottom, it does allow it to spread out a little bit more. This is going to be very thin wedges. I'm thinking I might go just a little bit thicker than this actually, because this is not much of an angle. Let's see this angle right here. So this angle is just the angle I've got here. Yeah, that's it. So it's only like 2 degrees. I'm thinking I want to go a little bit more. Not like 5, but maybe there. I think that's what I want, is that. So I'm going to bring this back. It's easier for me to see on here. Let's do this. I'm going to readjust my angles because I want a little bit more of an angle when I cut this. I'm going to bring this in and adjust this angle right there. Okay, there we go. So that's a little bit more of an extreme angle. By extreme, I mean like maybe another degree, but I like that a little bit better. So I'm going to erase most of this line and then redraw it from that point. And then all this is going to go over to the compound miter saw, where I will actually set this angle on the saw and cut these blocks. I like that better. Just a little bit more of an angle. It allows me to use just a little bit thicker wedge, or wedges in here. So I'll flip this over. It'd give me right there. There we go. Okay. So that is my angle now. And you can see that it is definitely tapered from this bottom part right here all the way up to the top where my thumb is. Definitely tapered. I don't know if you can see. It's kind of hard for you to see this. There we go. Kind of trying to do it without the glare. But anyway, that's it. And so when I cut these down now, it should give me a good taper. So I'm going to go over to the saw really quickly here and see if I can set this angle. Actually, you know what I need to do? I need to set this all the way down like this, because it'll be easier for me to set that angle with this extended out. So let me get this set up. so that angle matches. There we go. All right, so there's my angle. It's definitely not 90 degrees. You can see that. So you can see the difference there. So this is not a 90-degree angle. And then I'm going to go over to the saw over here and see if I can set this angle on my saw. So what I will do is loosen my saw here and move it slightly. And I'm going to lower this down and see if I can bring this back into line here. It's not much of an angle here. Don't want it touching the tooth. Okay, needs to come back a little bit more. So that maybe. See how that looks. That's pretty good. Pretty good. All right, I'm going to lock this in down. All right, I've got that angle set. And what I can do is bring this over and then I'm going to transfer those lines onto the back also, because it'll make life easier when I'm cutting this. Be able to flip the piece over instead of having to reset the angle. So let me do this one. I'm going to transfer these lines over to the back. So I'm going to draw the line from the top here with my little saddle square. And I'm going to draw the line over this one. You can't just draw it straight across because it's not a square line, right? So I have to transfer it from both sides. And then I will connect those sides. And I should be able to connect these sides with this. And they should match up exactly where I just drew them. Pencil is so hard to see on walnut. But, oh, that's nice. Perfect. Okay, there we go. All right, so now I have my line drawn. So I can cut this side, and then I can flip it over and cut this side. And I'm going to cut inside these lines. So I need to cut away this section in here. So I just need to remind myself which side to cut. All right, let's go over and cut this real quick. This is the hardest part of the whole thing, pretty much, is just getting these lines cut the right place. Get that inside that line right there. All right, let's do one. Fingers crossed. I have more walnut if it doesn't work out. Okay, that worked out. So if I bring this back over here, and I'll use this piece as one of our setup pieces, and then let me line up the corners here, and like this. All right. So hopefully you can see now that we have a wedge. This will line up in here. We have a wedge shape right here. And that lines up really well. Now, the question I have is, how do I want to glue this up? Because honestly, it might be difficult to glue this all in one and keep them from sliding. And just in case you were wondering, where's my... Here it is. This piece will fit underneath like that. So hopefully that gives you a little bit better idea of what we're looking at here in terms of spacing. So we've got this handle fits in the middle like this. And I don't know if you can see that, but that gives us our space in between here. I don't know if you can see that or not. Let me come down. There we go. That's better. So we've got space in between here, and we drive this apart. All we're gonna have to do is make sure that this area from here to here matches up with this distance once we get this glued. I think what I'm gonna do is glue these. I'm gonna glue this first one, or get it started. And that means just getting it set in the glue. And then I'll put some clamps on it. But if I get it started and get these perfectly lined up, that will really go, I think, a long way in getting this perfectly square, because I can get these bottoms and such lined up really square here. So I think that's what I'm going to do. All right, now let me make sure that I've got this wood oriented the right way. Is this the way I was going to go? Or was I going to go this way? Or this way? So confusing now. Okay, I think that's the way, but I think this one is flipped. So let me turn it this way and see if that looks good grain-wise. No. Turn it this way. There we go. Okay, that's the way I want it. So I'm going to take this one off. And we are going to glue this on. So I'm going to go one by one here. Just going to move it this way. And I'm going to glue on here. Yeah. Is that what I'm doing? Yep. You only get one chance to do it right. But you get a bunch of chances to do it wrong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this glue on here. I'm going to hold it for just a little bit. The glue actually sets up pretty quick to the point where it won't slide around. And I'm going to make sure I get all the glue off of this inside edge here, or not all of it, but a lot of it off that inside edge, so that when I get this thing set, it's not going to do a lot of sliding. And then once I get the edges kind of where I want them, the thing you can do with glue is you can just hold it in place. And after, I don't know, a minute maybe, if that long, you'll get this stuff to line up. I'm going to push it. I'm putting this wedge of wood right down here just to kind of hold that bottom together. And then I'm going to just hold this in place. And then I will clamp this, but I'm trying to get this one set. And then once this one is set, I will put the other one on, get it set. And then we can clamp this thing together, because you don't want these things moving. I've seen a lot of people do different things. They'll put like a little pin in here to keep them from shifting and some other stuff. I mean, honestly, you know, there's 1,000 different ways to clamp. So we'll see what I come up with here. I just don't want them to shift too much while I'm getting it set up. So that's why I'm doing it this way. I've also seen people use like a little bit of super glue in there. The super glue kind of just holds it quickly while you're getting things aligned. So that's also an option, is put a couple of drops of super glue in with the glue joint. But I was found that to be a little weird and messy. So we won't be doing that. And then once I get this thing kind of gluing up here, then I'll kind of move on to the handle stuff, and we'll get that handle rolling here. 'Cause I'm really excited about the handle. I mean, that stuff looks gorgeous. Really pretty. All right, I'm gonna move this. So that is good. I'm gonna leave that set for just a minute. Glue takes a while to set up, so if I slide it right now, it will move. But for right now, I can get this one done. It's not gonna go anywhere. It'll stay there. Like I can pick it up and do it like this. It's not gonna move. So let's get this one the same way. So I'm gonna put a little bit more glue to the edge here, just a little bit towards the inside. I mean, there's still going to be glue on the whole joint, but I'm just kind of, and then most of this is going to get wiped off. Really thin film here on the inside. I don't want a ton of squeeze out right there. And then I can remove a lot of this because I just don't need that much glue. So, helpful hint, always have a towel ready. So you can see why people do these things like in edited YouTube videos, because you get to skip all this weirdness. But this is what goes on, man. All right, that is probably, I mean, you can see that's not a lot of glue right there, right? But more than enough to hold this in place. That's gonna sit on here. I'm gonna wipe the glue off my fingers so I don't get glue on everything. Then I'll get my little block of wood here just to kind of square it up at the bottom. So I'm going to hold this to here, and I'll push it in and then slide it over so that this edge is lined up right there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold this in place for a few seconds, let this kind of set up just a little bit. Like I said, I'm not going to hold it for an hour because that would be stupid, but just want to get this in place. Once this is in place and set up, I can glue the other piece on, and it doesn't have to be set. I mean, after like 30 minutes, that's enough set time for me to glue that other piece on, because that glue will be bonded enough to hold it in place. It's not going to be completely set up, but it'll be bonded in place enough for me to actually glue on another piece. So we will take care of that. I just want to keep these from sliding right now. And this is an easy way to do it. It takes a little time, but glue actually gets a tack, a little bit tackiness to it after 30 seconds to a minute, to the point where it doesn't slide around as easily. When you first put it together, it slides around like it's on ice, but after you hold it in place for just a little bit, it gets a little bit tacky and then it won't move. So what I can do is I could put a board across here and clamp this to my table if I wanted to do it that way. I'm just looking to get a nice even clamping pressure on here without pulling or squeezing or moving. And I'm trying to figure out the best way to do it. I might be able to use some parallel clamps, maybe. Let's see here. Let's bring one parallel clamp over. I don't have any small ones, but I've got big ones. Let's see what we can do here with this thing. Because I want nice, even parallel clamping pressure on this. So what I might could do is put this inside here. Just get it to set down. And then, or maybe actually, you know what? Let's go this way. And did that slide? Hang on, that might have slid a little bit here. So let's check it again. This is where, yeah, that actually slid just a little bit. So I want that lined up And it's actually really holding really tight there. Okay. That might work. Let's bring my little clamp up here. We're just going to drop this down on top of here. That. And let's see if this does its thing here. Will it do its thing? There we go. Flat up at the top there. So we're just going to clamp this down. Let me go get another one. That actually seemed to work. That's nice and flat and straight there. We can do the same thing to this one. This one is set up pretty well. It's actually kind of tacky already. And just making sure we're good on the edges. And like I said, I only need to leave it in there for like 30 minutes. It'll get set up enough to be hold tight to where I can actually bring the other piece in and get that piece set. So right here, we'll just put that right against that. Lower this down and clamp it up. All right. Don't need Herculean strength here. Just enough. All right. So there we go. That's what we're looking at. We've got these two pieces in here. Once this is set for a few minutes, danger, Will Robinson. See, this is what you gotta be careful of. It slid just a tiny bit, and you don't want it to slide at all. So I need to check my edges here, get all my edges flushed up again. So you gotta be careful. Even these parallel clamps, you can get some sliding going on there. So I'm gonna try to put this right against the back edge of it, right there. Let's see if that does better. You know, it goes really slow with the clamping pressure here. There we go. Okay, there we go. Now we're good. And I'm going to clean these edges up. I mean, I'm going to run them across like the jointer or something just to clean up those edges, or use a hand plane to get them nice and smooth. But that looks pretty good. I got a little glue squeeze out here, a little glue squeeze out here. Okay, let's move on, shall we? We'll leave this sit for a little bit. Once that gets set up, we will move on to putting this piece on top. But we'll set that aside for right now. And let's bring over our handle piece. Now this piece of wood, you can notice the figure on this end. I don't know if you can see that or not. Anyway, this end has all the figure to it right here. This is just gorgeous figure on this thing. And down as you get down to this end, I mean, it's still figured, but not nearly as much as the figure down here. So we're gonna work with this end down here because it is the prettiest. And I'm just going to mark this off and find out how big of a piece we actually need here. So I'm going to say right about here is where we're going to go. And we're going to cut this down on the, so I marked one of these as, there we go. So this side right here. All right, so I'm going to cut this down right here. And just double check that, and that should be plenty, okay? And you notice I've got these little wide wings. I was just guessing. They're much wider than here, but that's okay because we will mold this up to the portion that we need to have flat. Now the other thing I'm gonna look at here is I'm gonna try to draw some of these dimensional lines on here so that we can get these cut nice and square. We definitely want these lines to be in the right place. So this is going to be the I don't know, the tongue the tenon, whatever you want to call it, that's this piece right here. This is all going to be tenon right here. This piece is all going to be handle down here. I want to keep this square. I think this is square. Let me make sure it's square. I did not square this off. I'm going to go square this off really quickly because that was stupid of me not to do that. Let me get this squared up because we absolutely do not want this piece to be unsquare because we're going to do all of our cutting based on that. So I got to set this back to 0. Now this has a detent at my 0 mark, which is nice. Yeah, so this is almost square, but not quite. So we're just going to take a tiny little bit off of here. Okay, you couldn't see a thing, could you? Anyway, we are nice and square now, and we can work on our measurements here. This tenon actually needs to go a little longer. I'm going to cut this a little longer. Let me get rid of all these lines here. I want the tenon to stick out quite a bit from the top because I can always trim off the excess, but it's nice if you want to make sure you've got enough when you're working with this stuff. So this is my handle length. I'm going to draw the edge of the handle right here. So this is going to be where my handle comes across and it actually meets the top of the block right here. So I've got this much set aside for handle, and then I need to figure out tenon length. So if I just look at this block right here, it's 3 1/4. And I want to go at least 1/4 of an inch above that. So we'll say 3 1/2 inches on that, about 3 1/2 inches above that. So we're going to say 10 1/2 inches right here. That's actually not 10 1/2 inches. That's just the mark I'm using. All right, so this will be where my tenon is. Okay, so we've got handle, we've got tenon. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut this off and have just this section to work with. It kind of gets rid of all this other excess wood right here. So I'm going to take this over to the saw. We will put this on, I'm going to mark my flat side here, just so I can remember it, because when I cut this off, I won't have my mark over here. Anyway, I'm going to cut this off and just have a smaller board to work with, and that will make life a little easier for us. Maybe. If I get this over. My saw doesn't want to, oh my goodness. I've got so much stuff over here. I can't move. Is that enough? There we go. Okay. There we go. All right, this is our handle. Now, from this handle, I need to basically find my center point. And this is not an exact measurement, so makes life a little harder to get those center points here. I'm going to get my, maybe if I can find it. There we go. I'm going to get my digital calipers because I can work in decimals, and that makes it a lot easier to find a center point when you're working with a decimal. So from the end of this, I've got Of course it's going to be that way. How about millimeters? Is it easier in millimeters? No. Really? Really? Everything's going to be odd. There we go. 71.6, right? So 71.6, write it down. Was that 36.8? Right? So, yes, I know that's simple math, but you know what? I'm a simpleton, so I just want to make sure that I'm doing this right. 71.6. So 35, what did I say? I said 36, see? So that would have been wrong. 35.8, because I'm an idiot. 35.8 inches, or millimeters, so we're going to go to 35.8. I will make that mark on here. 35 point. And the reason we're making a center mark on here is that we want to find, first we want to get this centered, and then what we're going to do is we're going to measure from that center line. We're going to just measure down the length. Oh, come on. There we go. Close enough. We're going to measure down the length of the board here and get that and figure out how much we need to trim off of this. Okay, so I've got a center line marked on here. I can now transfer that, or I could just do the same thing down here and then connect the lines. Would probably be the smarter thing to do, right? Is just connect those lines to make sure that they are actually centered here. So, because getting this on here, it's a little tricky. So you can see how it kind of moves around. But I think I could probably use this one. I just need to connect my two lines here. And get a center line for that tenon. All right, so there's the center line. Show you here. There's the center line for my tenon right there. And then we can measure the distance. Well, I could sort of measure the distance. I can't really get my ruler in there right now to measure the distance on how far apart that is. I need to measure the thinnest part of that. I'm going to loosen this because I don't think these are going to move now. I know, dangerous, right? But I think we're okay that I can do this without risking this, because I'm going to take this and I'm just going to measure how far apart that is. That's all I want to do is measure that, and then I'll put the back in the clamp again. But once it's been in the clamps for that period of time, it's going to hold pretty well. I'll go ahead and just get a little bit more clamping pressure on there. There we go. Did I just shift that? You gotta be kidding if I shifted that, because there's no way I shifted that. I think that shifted in. Yeah, see, I can't even move it with my fingers now. That's how tight this is held. So I'm gonna go ahead and, I mean, it's just hard to get things not to shift. What can I say? Okay. And then we're going to go back and clamp that other piece on in a minute. But I have a distance of 38.39. Of course, it can't be even. Why does everything have to be that way? So we'll call it 38.40, right? Because that's just easier. And if I have a little bit of slop on each side, that's okay too. And this is the narrow side, not the wide side. So 38.4. So we got 19.2 on each side of this center line. 19.2. is what we want to cut these down to. Ooh, look at that, 19.2. So I'm going to mark 19.2 from that center line. Now, I'm sure there's probably much easier ways to do this. And I'm sure that there's lots of people who are going to tell me that there's much easier ways to do this. And that's okay. If you know a much easier way, please let me know. Oh, Shabazz. Hey, sorry, I hadn't looked at my screen. I'm good. How are you doing? Coming in from the Facebook feed. You guys Facebook? No, is that YouTube? I always forget. That'd be from YouTube. All right. So I've got my tenon width marked off here. Let me make sure this is the right one here. So we've got the width of the tenon marked. And I'm going to mark it down low as well, just so that I can transfer those lines all the way down. And then what we can do is cut these out. Okay. So I've got the width of the tenon. This is at the smallest portion. This is where the tenon meets the mallet head, is that smallest section of wood right there. Remember, this is going to be spread out with some wedges, but at its narrowest portion, it needs to meet up down there at the mallet head, which will join right here. This will all be mallet right here. So it'll look like that. Anyway, so what I can do is I can make these cuts. I can make these on the bandsaw. I can try to use a, I'm going to try to do these on the bandsaw. It's really hard to make straight cuts on my bandsaw, but I'm going to try my best because it gives me my best chance of getting these things square and correct. I'm going to put this on here and draw these lines. That. And we're going to do the same thing over here. So if you're just joining me, I'm making a mallet, a square mallet, because I only have a round mallet. And so instead of this thing, which is round, we're going to have something with a nice square, big square blocky head. It'll be about this dimension, which I can use for doing chisel work and other various things. All right, so I have these lines cut now, and those are going to allow me to take this over to, I don't know, we're going to take this to the bandsaw. Let's try this on the bandsaw. What the heck, right? Let me get my computer out of the way. I'll actually put a camera on this for you, but I got to move. Ooh, we're going to lower the saw blade way down underneath, and we'll move a camera over here to the bandsaw. Okay, there we go. So I was actually watching a really cool review this weekend on table saws, and I was looking at a Laguna table saw, which is a Laguna Fusion 2. They make 3 different versions. There's a 1, 2, and a 3. And, oops. They had a Laguna version 2, which is actually a 110. It's like 1 3/4 horsepower. It's a 110 volt, which is what I have in my shop. Big difference is I would need a 20 amp fuse for it, because 15 amp breakers probably not enough. You'd probably end up popping the breaker all the time with 15 amps, but 20 amps is pretty nice. All right, I've got a square here that I'm thinking I might use this fence. Okay, this is a Craig fence right here that I can run in my miter slot. And so here's my miter slot right here, because I want to try to keep these lines really straight. I don't need the stop. But this one has some really accurate stuff on here. Let's see if I put this, I can actually run this over further. There we go. Kind of balances it out a little more. Let me just like this. I can actually move this over here. So anyway, this gives me a little bit more balance, but I don't know if it's going to give me the depth that I need. That's the problem, because this handle's pretty long. I can get the sides cut though, and I think the sides cutting, the sides straight and square are really what I need to concentrate on here, because I want to get these cut straight so that they actually both are very square to the mallet head, right? And that looks really good. But the problem is I need to wrap these lines around, because if I cut this way with the table saw, right, I can cut up to this line, but when I flip it over, there's no lines here. So I go back to the saddle square, and let's get these marked up here. And we'll do the same thing over here. Just going to put my pencil on the line, and then I can cross over like this. And then I just need to mark how far that line is to here. And then I'll know how far to, I know where to stop my saw when I'm pushing through here. There we go. All right. So now I have these lines drawn out. We can go back over to the saw here, and I'm going to just cut these. I'm going to try to keep just to the inside of that line. I have a very big flat blade on here, so I should get a pretty flat square cut. Let me get my dust collector turned on. All right, actually not too bad. So these are the first two lines that I've cut right there. And now what I'll do is I will cut this part of the wood away, all this stuff outside the lines here. So all of this and all of this gets cut away. And then from there, that should give me a nice square face on here to meet the tenon, or to meet the mallet head. And I'm going to just set up a fence to run this with. Let me grab my tool here. All right, this doesn't have to be exact, but I'd like to be close. So I'm going to go back over here. I don't need this. Problem with this, I love this fence right here, but I can't, the wood needs to cut from here, which means the fence would need to come all the way back here, and you can see it's just not stable back there. So it did its job. I'm going to put it away. So it did its job, but it's not going to work for what I need now. So I will go to my fence here. I've got a little mag fence. So this is pretty nice right here. Just has magnetic catches, so I can set this to whatever angle I want. It slides all around. When you lock these down, it does not, I mean, it's rock solid. But that allows me to actually use that as a guide to then push into these cuts. So what I'm going to do is I need to draw a better line here. I'm not sure why that line looks so good. I'm going to draw a nice little dark line here to give me a nice reference point to set this fence up here. And I'm actually going to carry this, line. So you can see I'm actually going to take this line that I drew and I'm going to carry it over to the front as well so that I can see, get this right here. I want this line on the front piece as well. So I'm trying to line this up on the saw blade. I make sure that I'm seeing exactly where that saw is going to cut because I want to be on the inside of that cut. So I'm going to bring this over. And I have a way of actually squaring the blade up. So that looks pretty good right there. Because you have to remember the teeth on a saw blade, they go out and in. So you've basically got teeth like this. And you have to account for that width. That's the kerf of those teeth cutting away. So you want to make sure that wherever those teeth are, they're not going to cut into your line. That looks pretty good. I'm just going to lock this for a second. And I'm going to take this, which is just a sliding square. I put this part in the little channel right here, the little groove in the table, and I'm going to measure how far this is to that fence right there at the point where it was lined up nicely. I'm going to lock this in, and now I'm going to move these ends down until they both are touching at the same point. So that end and that end. So that should all be square. And then I'll check it again. Sure it's inside my spot here. It's good. And then I can just take this and slide it into the cut all the way down to that first cut that we made. So let me go ahead. Looks like it's lined up. I'm going to go really slow here, try to be accurate. Okay. So now we have our tenon cut right here. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to cut two lines inside here. We're going to make two similar cuts, but we're going to cut them down inside so that when we actually insert this into our wedged head, we can insert some wedges inside here. They'll spread apart and hold everything nice and tight. Shouldn't be a problem. Now I can, if I wanted to, and the problem with this stuff is it's so curly that it really does affect your cut quality. What I can do with this is actually just take either sandpaper on a block, so I can get a block of wood that's very flat and just sand across here, which actually I might do. Maybe get something like a 120 paper. like this. Let me find a good block. Has nice square edges. And just trying to smooth this out a little bit and get it nice and square across there. I could also get a file if I wanted to. You know what else I could do? I could take these headphones off because they really kill my head when I'm wearing them. And all I want to do is get these kind of flattened down. So a couple different ways to do it, but the sandpaper way is actually not too bad. Remember, all of this tenon is going to be inside the head of the mallet, so you're not going to see them. But I do want them to have a kind of a straight. I want it to be a straight surface head, so when it meets up with that mallet head, I've got a lot of glue surface and a lot of surface there that is making contact. So, let's see. Speaking of my mallet head, I'm going to go ahead and loosen these clamps. Now, this is by no means done gluing, but I think it's done gluing enough for us to glue that other section on. And also we can check fit now. So this piece needs to come in it's a little tight, and you can see we're just a little tight in there. It doesn't want to quite fit. It's pretty close. That's okay. I'd rather be tight because I can always sand down to that. Now up top here, you can see where I've got a lot of extra area here. So you can see that there's area for that to spread out. As you can see, that doesn't fit, right? But down here, it's going to be very tight. So I still need to get this sanded down just a little bit. But in the meantime, we can get this sucker glued on here like this. So I'm going to put some glue on here. This one shifted on me. I'm a little upset about that. I wonder if I can. Yeah, it's pretty set. That's pretty set up right there. I'm just going to tell you right now. That's all right. It'll trim down. I actually made these a little oversized so that when they can be trimmed down, we can trim them on like the table saw and get it very straight. So I did do these a little oversized because I knew that gluing them up would not be perfect. So we're going to put our glue on this side, and then I'll do the same thing over on this side down here. And then we can put this other piece on here. I mean, it's really funny. People think that, glue takes so long to set up. Glue sets pretty quick. I mean, you want to make sure that you're giving it ample time to cure, but honestly, the setup time for glue is not that long. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to do it like this because I want this to be as square as I can get it. So I'm going to square these up and then clamp it, and then I will get some paper towel here, and then I will move it to some different clamps in a minute. I just want to get it set up really square and flat for the first part here, and that's not necessarily easy to do. So I'm going to get a small clamp to start with, and I'm just going to clamp this in place while I'm holding it square and flush here. And when I get this small clamp in place, I can transfer this over to my my larger clamp. Do it like that. That's fine. So I'm just holding it, and I'm using my table as a kind of a reference to just keep it square and flat and flush for the moment. But get that super tightened down on there. Now I can put it inside here, and we will clamp it down with this, and that should keep it from shifting in this clamp, hopefully. In the clamps as well, right here. And then we're good to go. Maybe. There we go. And then I'll tighten this up. All right. Little squeeze out on both ends. That's a good thing. Okay. Just going to clean the squeeze up out. And then we can go back to working on our tenon because it needs a little work to fit inside of that handle right there. So I'm going to put that in my, let's see, which side do I want to work on? Let's work on this side. Put that in here. Now, one thing I can do, I mentioned this before, is I can get a rasp, and rasps are kind of nice because you can kind of keep them flat. Remove some wood. So we're just going to work on it like this. I'm going to try to keep it very flat as I do this. Son go to work? I think he did go to work. Okay. Like this. We can come back with that sandpaper, which is also a very flat surface. Work that across there. Just trying to keep things nice and square as I do this. And then we can flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. That feels really good. So a couple things, we're getting rid of the saw marks. But we're also kind of getting this thing squared up. Now I can keep checking it too. Ooh, that's a nice fit inside there. So let's clean up this other side that we haven't done yet. Oop, don't get stuck. We're going to clean up this rough side, and then it should fit in there pretty well. Oh, it's my dogs upstairs. I kept hearing something. I thought, what am I hearing? It's my dogs upstairs being stupid, which they are wont to be sometimes. Okay. So we're just going to work the rasp here a little bit. Try to keep it very flush. And I'm going to go back to my sandpaper. I like the sandpaper because this block allows me to really keep it pressed down and flat to that cut. And I can also come across the butt of that and just kind of run it back and forth on there a little bit. Get that part cleaned out. All right, let me flip this around. Make sure there's nobody in the comments, which there's not, but that's okay. All right, once we get this cleaned up, which I think we're pretty good at, and this is, I think, 120 paper that I'm using. So it doesn't have to be super cool, great. Just get this, let me get this right on the edge here. There we go. Okay, so these edges are now pretty nice. So you can see that they're much flatter than they were. They were much rougher with that saw blade, but now they're pretty flat, pretty nice, and good. And it does, ooh, look at that. Slides into the handle over here. So that really nice fit on the handle. Hooray. All right, so now we can actually move on to making the shape. Well, actually, no. I take that back. Before I do that, I'm going to make my 2 cuts inside here because I can keep this square right now because I still have square sides. If I try to make those cuts after the fact, there's no way to keep it square as I'm running it through because this is rounded. So I want to make sure I keep this square edge right here and right here as a reference while I run this into the table saw to get them done. So what I'm going to do is kind of divide this area in 2 here, divide it by 3, 2, 3. Let's see what we got here for width here. So we're at 1.5 inches, which means if I put a mark a 1/2 inch, yeah, so we'll cut these about 1/2 inch in on each side. And let's go back to inches here. If I go to 0.5 to make my cut marks, give or take 1/1000th or 10,000th of an inch. There we go, 0.5. So if I make a cut here, and I make a cut here, okay, and that's going to allow me to evenly space those wedges out. And the other thing I want to do, like I said, is I'm going to actually drill a hole in the bottom of these to keep that wood from splitting down into the handle. So this is, I don't know where this trick is. I saw this somewhere. Can't remember where exactly, but it doesn't have to be a huge hole. In fact, let me get my drill bits out here and find out what I want to actually use to drill this hole. I could probably just hand drill it. I mean, it doesn't have to be exact or anything. I think a 3/16 hole would be perfect on this. And I think I'm going to go ahead and just hand drill this through. You know, just kind of try to hold it straight. It's going to be above the handle level. So I'm going to be slightly above where this is going to join. And I'm just going to drill straight through. One thing I will do though is I'm just going to put a little mark on here as to where I want this to go. And right here, I want this to, I've got a marking awl that I haven't made a handle for yet, and I really need to do that. Because I'll tell you what, a marking awl is super handy. All right, I need a piece of wood to drill into. Hey, look, a piece of wood. So basically all I'm going to do, take my drill a hole straight through this. And then I'm going to connect that with a line from the top. Oh, duh. There we go. Okay. So we're going to put this right there. You know what? Hang on. I'm going to get a brad point bit just because I really want this to be right in the perfect spot here. So let me see if I can find myself a 3/16 brad point bit. I think I've got one here somewhere. I have 3/16 right there is a 3/16. All right, I've got a brad point, and the brad point just gives you a little bit more accuracy when you're trying to hit a specific spot. So I can put that right on my little point that I made. And all right, and then look around, make sure I'm going to go straight up and down. All right, and here's my hole all the way through. You can see basically just drilled straight through, right? But it's above the line where it's going to meet the handle. And that's kind of the whole point of this, is that you want to go above that line so that you're not below the handle. This allows for some movement. So this allows for movement as we cut into here. It allows that wood to separate a little bit and not split. And that's really what we're after, is not letting the wood split. All right, so now what I need to do is draw my 1/2 inch lines all the way down. And I think I marked these here, but I'm going to mark them again just as a guide to myself when I'm using the saw over here. I'm just going to run a straight edge. It could be any straight edge. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just a reference edge. So I'm just going to use this card right here and connect those lines so that I can follow them with the saw and just make sure that I'm going that distance. All right. So here's my lines, not the middle one. I'm going to get rid of my middle line now because we don't need that one. And it's just going to confuse things. All right. So there's my lines right there. Those are going to go straight down to those to those circles that we just did. I am going to carry this line across the top here because, like I said, it's easier with the bandsaw. If I can look at where the saw impacts the end, it just helps me to make that a little better. And then I'll do this one as well. If you do not have a saddle square, you need to invest $12 or whatever it is on Amazon and get one, because honestly, these things are so useful. They just help you carry lines from one surface across to the other and keep them nice and square, and really, really useful. So there you can see my end lines now carried across from the top. And we're going to go over to the saw and we are going to cut these out. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put stuff away first. Look at that. I'm going to get my little drill bit. I'm going to put it back in the package. I'm going to get that out of the way so that I don't make a mess with anything. Put that away. All right, now we can set up our cut here that we want to go run through here. And we're just going to split that line now. So we just need to kind of put that in the middle of the kerf of the saw. So I'm going to do the same method I did last time, where I'm going to get my sliding square and I'm going to measure how far now, because I've got that saw blade set to where it was in the right spot to make the cut. But now I need to get the rest of the fence set up here. That's right. And let's set up this end. About like there. And about like there. This should be in the right spot. All right, let's check this and see. Yep, pretty good. All right, I'm going to run this through and I'll flip it and do the same thing. And the nice thing is I don't have to worry about it too much. I've got my end mark here and I know where it's going to match down here. So I don't have to redraw that line on the back. I just need my ears. And then we'll go ahead and cut these. These are relief cuts for the wedges. I think about it. Just easy with a head up button. Ah, well, that's why. So that certainly didn't sound very noisy, but that certainly doesn't help. Okay. I need a new table or a new bandsaw. It's just one of those things I need. I know everybody needs a new something, right? I really do need. A problem is, my big problem is power. I've got these things that I want to get and I need to get, but I need to get power in my shop. I think that's probably what I should concentrate on first. Not tools, but power. So what I'm doing here is I'm just using a bit of sandpaper inside those cuts just to kind of clean up a little bit of rough edges that kind of get thrown around with a bandsaw. And so I'm just folded up a piece of paper here. And then I will show you my cuts here. All right. So these are the cuts we just made. And you can see the little circles at the bottom. And what will happen is I will, should I try? Let me see something here. Hang on just a second. I'm going to use my saw just really quickly here. I saw it's so noisy. It also has a really large bit on it, so it's not happy. Or bit. It has a very large blade on it, so it's not super happy with the blade that it's on there. It doesn't like having a blade quite that large on there. It's I think a 1/2-inch blade for like I use it for resawing and such, but it could be happier with a thinner blade. Anyway, so this be a wedge, right? See, nice wedgy shape. And this wedge will then go down inside these pieces like this. And when that wedge goes inside, it pushes these outward. And this little relief circle right here just keeps that wood from splitting down inside. Because these don't get wedged out that far. They really are not going to be super, super wide spreading. They're really thin, but we're going to try to eliminate any error that we have there from those things splitting. All right, so next thing we need to do the handle. And what I'm going to do is line this up and center it best I can on here, because this is going to be like this. This is going to be my template, and this will actually get glued onto the double stick tape it on here once I get this cut out. But I've just got a simple handle shape on here. I'm just going to draw this on here. And then we can take this over back to our friend the table or the bandsaw and just kind of cut this out and get it close. And then, dang it. And then once we have this cut out, if I can keep this from sliding, there we go. Once we get this cut out, then I will tape this onto the handle section, and we will use a flush trim bit in the table or in the router table to just kind of clean up the edges. But that's my general design on the handle. It's not fancy. You can see it kind of comes out big in the bottom, and basically I just kind of held it in my hand like this, and I imagine it a little bit bigger, and I've got very large hands, so that looks like it should do a good job. So like I said, I have a very large blade on my saw, so I can't make super tight cuts with it. So I'm just going to kind of be hacking these things off close to that line, but not on the line. Then we will come back and we will double side tape this down and use that as a template to, if we can get it in the right spot, we'll use this as a template on here to get this thing flush trimmed down to the exact specifications. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and head back over to the saw. And in the meantime, our stuff is gluing up here and doing pretty well, looks like. What time is it here? 1 o'clock. So we're doing pretty good. I should get this handle done pretty quickly here. So let's go ahead. I think we can get the handle done and flush trimmed before we're done today. So let's head back over to the table. Let me grab my ears here. And I'm going to take this off, and we're just going to put it up here. That's the nice part about magnets, is it just holds and doesn't go anywhere. And then I'm going to try to get this cut down close to the lines here. Okay, so I did my best to kind of keep this about 1 millimeter away from the line in most cases, really close to it. Um, I did use my little block of sandpaper here after the first cut just because the force of the saw pushes a lot of wood fibers down, and I wanted it to be nice and flat on the table. So I just made sure that I wasn't getting any wood fibers making this thing stand up uneven on the table. Now I need to move some stuff around here because I've got all these finished bases here. Well, needing to be finished bases. How about that? We'll just say that they need finish. I'm going to set them on the floor gently, gently, gently on the floor, out of the way, so that we can come over and use the router table. All right, I think I have, do I have my router table on here? I sort of have the router table on here. I had the table saw. I don't know why I had the table saw. I thought maybe I'd be using it, but that really didn't make a lot of sense. That's where we're going to be working. It's right there. And I'm just going to zoom in a little bit for you. Right there. All right. I do need a flush trim bit. So I'm going to come over and look at my flush trim bits and see what I've got here. And I want something that's going to have enough. I wish I had a nice spiral flush trim. I need to get a spiral flush trim bit. I do not have one. I have straight flush trims. I do not have a spiral, which is kind of odd. Okay, I've got this little one right here. That's not tall enough. That's not tall enough. This one is tall enough. All right. So I have one here that looks like it has enough meat on it. So let's check the blade height. And it does have enough meat on it. So this is what we're going to use right here to trim this down. So take this off of here, raise this up and take this bit out. My table is unplugged for those of you who are wondering. And I know that because I only have one cord that goes to like all these tools, and it's plugged into my other saw at the moment. So let's go ahead and actually this little pipe right here is actually a little accent piece that's going to go in the handle, but we'll get to that in a little bit. All right, so I need to move some of this stuff off and clean up my workspace because I don't like having a lot of stuff on the workspace. You need to get the wrench. And we had the 1/8 inch roundover on here, so we're going to take that out. I really need to get myself a nice spiral flush trim bit. I need to invest in one. I'm thinking that's a thing now that I should look into. Need to find who's got a nice one. I like white side bits. This is a cheap bit, which kind of makes me worried on this figured wood. I'm going to go really slow because I don't want this stuff chipping out. But anyway, let's lower this back down. And we'll put the appropriate guide on here, guide plate, which should be the small one, I think. Should fit on here, and it does. Nice. I don't know that I've ever actually used this one. It's so skinny. That's a 3/4 inch one. This is going to go on here in that bearing. So we're going to have the blade. So it's just so the tip of the blade is clearing that, and then the bearing will go on my template right here. So with the template is going to get double-sided taped onto here. So let me grab some tape. I'm going to get this tape. I'm going to use this tape. It's a little thicker. I think it'll work a little bit better for this. I'll have to cut it in little strips. Let me get my scissors. But my template is not perfectly flat, I don't think. Kind of because it's made out of plywood. I know. What was I thinking? Oh, is this not going to cut? My scissors definitely need some sharpening here. There we go. So I'm going to start putting some double-sided tape down on here. And I don't care if I use too much, I can always just take it off, but I really want this to be held tight. So I'm going to put probably more than I need on here, but that's okay. Nice wide piece right here. And then once I get down here, I'll have to cut all this off of here, but it's okay. This is, let's see if this is going to be okay right here. Perfect. Okay. Perfect. Put it down near the end. Right there. All right. So I've got my double-sided tape pieces on here, and I'm just going to get my marking knife here to take the, which way do I want to work here? To take the unsticky part off of here and reveal the tape. This is more of a, this is U-line double side, but this is more like a carpet tape almost. It's a little thicker, has a little bit more of a, I've got some that's like a paper tape almost, really thin, like a masking tape, much thinner. And if you have really flat template pieces, it works great. But this stuff, like I said, it's not perfectly flat. So this stuff has a little bit more thickness to it, which I think I'm more confident with it sticking to that template piece and holding it in place. But always getting the cover pieces off of here is always kind of a pain in the butt. That's why I always like to use a marking knife or something sharp to get those pieces off, because my fingernails are never enough. All right, so now I've got that off. I need to get this thing lined up so that it is inside, and then we'll press it down. So that looks like it's pretty perfect right there. All right, I'm gonna press this down and make sure that it is not moving. So that's pretty good right there. That's nice and tight and should provide a very nice, yep. So my bearing rides nicely on there. I could actually rise this up a little bit more. There we go. And that will provide a nice thing. I'm going to go really slow with these cuts. So nothing extreme here. I'm going to go very gentle with it because, one, because of the nature of this wood, it's very, very figured. And because I don't have a spiral bit, once again, sadness on my part, I'm going to get one. But hopefully I don't get chip out on this thing. I'm going to go as light as I can on here. So let me go get my power cord, get this table plugged in here. There we go. And get this plugged in. And I'm just going to bring the, I'm going to bring my dust hose over here just to kind of, it's not going to do a lot, but hopefully get some of the, catch some of this stuff coming off of here. Go. All righty. And I've got a pad here so that I can keep my fingers away from the edge as I'm pulling this thing through. I don't want my fingers on here because if it catches and pulls, that's bad news. So at least if I got a pad here, if it catches and pulls, it's going to mess up my pad, not my fingers. All right, let's turn on the dust vac, let's turn on the router, and let's see if we can make this happen. Whoa! Yep, careful. All right, I'm not going to push my luck. I can clean this edge off with sandpaper and stuff. It did chip just a little bit, but it's still within my limit there, so I can clean it up. But because that was on the edge, what happened was this is at the edge, and this bit is spinning this direction. So as those teeth come around, they caught that edge, and boop, they kicked and tore a little bit, but not into the actual edge of my project. So that's good. The rest of this cleaned up pretty nice. Got a little burning here, but that will all clean off with some that'll clean off with some sandpaper. So we can do that. I can bring over. Probably what I'll do is bring. Well, first of all, let's do this. Take that off, and we're going to clean off the double-sided tape like this. So that worked pretty well. Got my shape down, basically what I want. And I'm going to take this back to, once I get these these edges cleaned off, I'm going to take it back over here, but I'm going to put a chamfer bit on here. And I'm going to chamfer this at a 45-degree chamfer along the edges to kind of clean up and not make it like really hard here. So it'll have a nice chamfer running all the way on all the sides here, and that will make it a nice clean operation. But in the meantime, I think what I can do is I'm going to bring over my disc sander, and not my disc sander, I'm sorry, my spindle sander. And we can just do some spindle sanding on this, just to kind of clean up those burn marks, which make me now know that I absolutely need a spiral flush trim bit. I'm just lowering this down to get it out of the way. And then we will put this up here like this. And then I can attach the dust collection to it, plug it in, and then we can clean this up. I've got a large bit on here, or a large sanding spindle on there right now. Don't know that I need one that big, but we'll start with that one for nice gentle curves. And I need some ears for this. Need some dust collection turned on. And let's clean this up. And you know what? You can't see a thing except this, can you? So let's go ahead and we'll zoom out a little bit and move the camera a little bit for you here. All right, there we go. Okay. That's a better view for you. There's the spindle sander. This is a Triton oscillating spindle sander. Just means it goes up and down as well as spins. All right. And Okay, that got most of it, and you can see I've cleaned up a lot of the burning marks and such on the inside. I still need, you can see right here, still very burned looking inside of here. And to clean that up, we're going to need to change spindles because this one is too large to fit inside of that curve. So I'm just going to loosen the top nut here, and we will change to a smaller spindle. Probably something about like this, I think, would work. We need something that, I'm going to go with a less aggressive paper on this, I think would be good. Maybe. There we go. Probably good. And tighten this down. So basically, when you put that washer on there, you tighten this nut down. It squeezes the rubber out, which basically holds it onto the spindle. So that's pretty good. Let me, oops, tighten this on. And then I need to change this because that was the large one. And we need this to be more of a size match so that we get better dust collection from here. Is that the wrong one? Oh, wrong one. Hang on. There we go. So I need probably this one. Yep. And it has holes all through here, so it just collects the dust and pulls the dust down. All right, let's go ahead and get this cleaned up. Okay, so I got that really nice and cleaned up on the inside. You can see here that all of those burn marks that were inside there are now gone. These lines in here are actually from that figure, so that's gonna, those will disappear afterwards. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna put a chamfer on this thing. Kind of just running at the seat of my pants here. I'm kind of doing this as I go here. I kind of had the idea of the chamfer on here just to kind of smooth up those edges without having to do a lot of hand shaping on that handle. Because obviously square handled, square edged handles, not that comfortable. So we want to make sure this is a comfortable hammer to use, or mallet. Go ahead and loosen this. Okay. And I have just a small chamfer bit on here. We'll go ahead and raise this up and put that in. I actually have a really nice chamfer bit. Wonder if I should use that. It's pretty big, but it's a really sharp chamfer bit, which might actually be better. What time is it? What time we got here? Ah, it's almost end of the show time, but you know what? I got nothing else going on today, so we'll just keep running on here. This might be a long show. Might be a long show. Okay, so I'm going to take this one out. Actually, let me look at that other chamfer bit, because I bought this to do a different project, and this chamfer bit is really super nice. It's beefy though. So check this thing out. This is a big beefy bit right here. Here's my normal one right here. Put it somewhere you can see it. So there's the normal one. There's this one. So much more beefier. Let me change camera angle again for you guys. Sorry about that. I get kind of involved here and I forget you can't see what I'm doing. So there we go. All right. Anyway, this is a very big, beefy chamfer bit. Once again, you can see the comparison between the two right here. Just very different. But I got this one to do a much deeper chamfer bit, and I think you can actually make miter cuts for like 45, for like 3/4 inch wood. You can make perfect miter cuts with that thing. But anyway, one of the things I love about it, it is a 1/2 inch shank, which means it's super stable, so you don't get chatter when you're running it. And I don't need the whole bit in here. I'm only going to use about about 1/4 inch of actual bit in here. So I'm going to lower this down. Let me get a nice wide opening for this thing. Probably this one will work. I don't want it to strike. That's wide enough. All right. We'll lock this in place. We will lower this down until, let me see, I'm going to get, like I said, I want 1/4 inch. So you just grab a ruler here and see where 1/4 inch comes into play. I got to lower this all the way down until that's going to be about right. I think that's about right. Get a piece of wood here. I'm just going to mark 1/4 inch. Give me a pencil here. I want to mark 1/4 inch on here and see where that's going to impact this. It's easier to see with a little piece of wood in there. With my little pencil line. Because this thing is, I don't know how big this is, maybe a little less than 1/4 inch. We can go less than 1/4 inch. That's less than 1/4 inch. So this right now, actually I can tell you how big this is going to be. Yeah, this might be enough. So right now I'm going to be taking off about 3/16. Now I might go a little less than that, just a tiny bit less than that. Let's see here, just a little less. Let's try a little less. Let's try that and see what that feels like on here. And yeah, if it feels good, if it needs more, we'll just do more. All right, let me get all this stuff out of the way here. Make sure that we're using the tools that we need. I need to plug in the router again. And I mean, that's the one nice thing about having just one cord, is that you really have to kind of plan your stuff out. So here's the hard part, is getting this part right here done. So we'll see how this works. Let's give it a shot here. Not bad. Not bad. Okay, so I need a minute to kind of wrap my head around if this is going to be enough. I think, I mean, it's still very sizable. I mean, my hand. I mean, but you can see that that chamfer actually did a really nice job there. Really, really nice. And the beauty of having a sharp blade. I'm going to need to fix this one a little bit. I can do that with some sandpaper. Where I didn't want to get right to that edge, because then it's kickback time, and then because it's right here, if I catch that edge, it'll throw it, it'll chip it, it'll do stuff. So I'm much happier to leave that edge undone, and I can do that with a hand plane or something. It's right on the edge. I'm trying to figure out if I like that or not. It feels substantial in my hand, though. It really does. It feels really good. And I kind of think I like that a lot. So, I mean, I could go up just a little bit more, but that feels so good in the hand. I mean, it's probably too big for most people, but for me, I mean, that's really, really nice. And I can move it around on my hand. I'm gonna smooth these out too. I'm not gonna leave these edges. I'm gonna contour these out and smooth them down a little bit. But wow, that's, yeah, I'm thinking that's good. I'm also gonna chamfer the head of the mallet, so that will get chamfered as well. It'll be a bigger chamfer than that, but That is awesome. And I don't know, you can't see that figure on there. That figure just looks amazing on there. And when this stuff gets finished, it's going to look incredible. I mean, it has no finish on it right now, and it looks amazing. So I can't even begin to think about how good this stuff is going to look once this thing gets sanded and then finished. I'm trying to think of what finish to use on here. Obviously, it's going to be like an oil finish. Maybe just some, I don't know if I have any natural. What do I have for finishes here? I've got a little bit of natural Danish oil. I might use the Danish oil. I might use a teak oil. I've got some teak oil finish. I might use that. I'm just doing this because I want to show you guys before we sign off today. I want you to see what this stuff looks like, because I'm gonna just hit it with some something, probably some mineral spirits or something, because I want you to see what this is looking like. Because this stuff is, wow, it's gorgeous. It is gorgeous. So this is just like some 320 paper or something. It's obviously, it's going to get sanded a lot more than this, but I figured I would just give it a little preliminary sanding, show you what it looks like. Let me grab a paper towel. Let me throw some finish on here and show you what this is going to look like, this handle anyway. And then we'll be done for the day. I thought I'd get this all done, but you know, the glue up is one of those things that just takes a while. You can't rush a glue up, unfortunately. This thing's almost empty. Why is it still up? I lost my little bottle popper thingy. It's around here somewhere. It fell on the floor somewhere, probably. I got to find it because that's how I pry up on all my lids. Don't want to use the scissors. Anyway, let's see if I've got enough on here. So let's go back to our home cam here. And let me get this over on the side because it's in the way. And I'll see if there's any, I'm almost out of this, thing's almost out of mineral spirits, but let me see if there's any left in here. Oh, there's some in here. We can get this done. All right. So I'm just going to take this and rub it down with just mineral spirits, which doesn't even begin to completely emphasize the beauty of this piece right here. But it'll give you an idea of what this flaminess looks like. Let's go to this camera right here. So let's see if I can get this in an angle here where you can see it. And just this stuff is just amazing. Look at the flame in this thing. It is crazy looking. So when I get this thing all done and finished, this is going to just look spectacular. And then marry that up with the walnut top. And this should be a mallet that, you know, this is one of those passed down to your grandkids kind of things. I'm still debating the handle here. It's a little beefy at the bottom. It might need to be a little thinner down here. Just a little thinner. Oh, and I also, where did I see this? I saw maybe Blacktail Studio did this. I think that's where it was. Blacktail Studio did this. He was making a mallet, and he did this really cool thing where he took a piece of brass tubing and inserted the brass tubing into here. So basically you cut a piece of brass tubing and then you cut a circle and then that goes through and fits in like this in the bottom. I couldn't find any brass tubing because, well, you know, I'm sure COVID or whatever else. But I've got this piece, which is a brass pipe nipple. So it's a little thicker. And I need to find a drill bit that is the proper size to fit this, because I'm going to drill a hole right in the middle here and put this in there. I'm going to cut a piece so that it fits, and then we'll put it in there. We'll epoxy it in, and then that will look awesome. So this is 0.5560. I don't know what that means. Let's try 721, 9/16. So I think I will be able to drill a 9/16 hole in here. We'll drive in a piece of this. I'll cut a piece that perfectly fits the width of this, and we'll drive that in, and then I can sand it flush. It's brass, so it will sand, and that'll look kind of cool. So I like that. All right, well, I think that was a lot of work today. What time is it? 1:43. It's almost 2 o'clock. Wow. I wasn't planning on running that long with this, but you can see sometimes even the simple projects, you know, they'll take time. And if you're doing them right, they take a little longer. I haven't even gotten to sanding this thing. So maybe next Wednesday, I actually have another project to start. It's a reclamation project. So we're going to take some screwed up pieces, some not screwed up pieces, and turn them into something else. But anyway, we'll get into that on Wednesday. But I think we will also be able to finish this, and that will that'll be a nice. Well, we won't finish it, but we'll get it close to finish. We'll the top, the mallet part will be completely glued up. We can get that squared up. We can get the we can get this all fixed. We can get the nipple put in there. I'll get the pieces cut for that, so we can get that epoxied in, and then we can. All right, maybe I'll just super glue it in. Put some super glue in there. Use some activator. Pretty fast to do it that way. Epoxy would be a long-term finish, but here's the thing: that little circle, there's nothing will be pushing or pressing or doing anything against that. So really, shouldn't be any issue with it coming out. But we'll get the mallet head done. We'll get it put on here. I'll cut some wedges. I'll find a piece of, I know I've got a piece of, yeah, look, see? There we go. I got a piece of walnut right here. So I will cut some walnut wedges out of this, and which should be, yep, it's the exact same width as this. Oh, that's so perfect. So the exact same width as this, so they'll fit perfectly down inside there. We'll cut some wedges. I'm going to try to cut them evenly so that I get perfect wedges for each side. And yeah, it'll be fun. All right, come back Wednesday. We'll finish this thing up, or we'll get it really close to being finished. It'll look awesome. And we'll start on a reclamation project. I'm not reclaiming anything bad. I've just got some pieces from a project that didn't turn out. We're going to take the usable stuff off of there, combine it with some new stuff, and make another awesome little kind of base. And we'll come back and do something that's really beefy. I'm debating. It's like, do I want to take this down just a little further? Right here, I think the waist right here just needs to be a little thinner. I could take it down, like I could get my sander, take it down, and then redo that and fix this along there. So I might do that still. I'm just still thinking. But anyway, thanks for being here for this. Hope you enjoyed it. Something different. It's not something I normally do. Anyway, come back and see me on Wednesday. We'll do some more stuff that maybe I haven't done before. It'll be fun. So take care of yourselves, and hopefully I'll see you then. Take care.